Now, I really wish that this was hearsay. I wish that this was like a bad rumor, but unfortunately, it's not. Both Gucci and Saint Laurent are going to be raising their prices, and they actually very publicly disclose this on their Capital Markets Day presentations, where they talk about the brands and they talk about, their roadmap for the future. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, both Gucci and Saint Laurent belong to the Kering group, which is kind of similar to like an LVMH, albeit much, much, much smaller and much, much, much less diversified. So LVMH does everything from like luxury to hotels to, spirits and alcohol, whereas the Kering group predominantly does focus on fashion. So the Kering group does have brands like Gucci and Saint Laurent. They also own Balenciaga, Bottega Veneta, Alexander McQueen, and a few others, and like some more like licensed eyewear brands. So they do compete with LVMH in the luxury fashion sector. And so what's really great about the Kering group is that they do provide like, comprehensive financial recaps of their businesses and also roadmaps ahead to the public. So I will link these for you down in the description box below. I think that these are such interesting presentations and really do like give you an insider look into what the brand is going to be doing over the next few years. But unfortunately, one of the key takeaways from both Gucci and Saint Laurent's presentations is that they are going to be increasing prices. Now, Gucci is currently about a $9 billion business a year, and Gucci does make up, I believe it's a little over half of Kering's overall portfolio. So basically, in order for Kering to be successful, Gucci has to be successful. And Gucci has been in a really interesting position because Gucci is heavily reliant on the Asian Pacific marketplaces, a lot of which have been greatly affected due to additional lockdowns in 2022 that you haven't seen as much of in other regions like in Europe and in the Americas. So Gucci has a lot of work to do because right now they're currently a $9 billion business and their goal is to get to a $15 billion business. Now, they are not just going to go through price increases to get there. They have a lot of different other strategies, such as focusing on offer, like high-end, made-to-order, ready-to-wear pieces, really focusing on fine jewelry, and also really pushing their exotics, those beautiful skins to their high-end customers, their top customers that really do deliver a lot of value for the business. They're also going to be focusing on, really pushing their hero bags, pulling things out of the archive, things that they know work really well, which is a lot of what we've been seeing, not just from Gucci, but a lot of other brands too, like Prada and Fendi. People are going with those classic bags that they know work really well. But let me draw your attention over here to where Gucci talks about elevating price positioning. So here they're highlighting their AUR, or average unit retail. And in blue is what it currently is, and in this tan color is what it's going to be. So you can see that they are going to be steadily increasing prices for their handbags and small leather goods, their ready-to-wear, and their shoes. And from the looks of these, it looks like it could be anywhere from like a 10, 15, all the way up to like 30% price increase. And I mean, they spell it out in black and white. Periodic price increases and constant elevation of the collection structure. And you see it again here under their key growth drivers. If you look at the middle section of the slide, talking about that AUR, that average unit retail, they are saying that they are going to achieve, increase average unit retails by weighting it about 1/3 with what they call seasonal price increases and 2/3 elevation of the collection structure, i.e. launching those high ticket items. Now, something that I think is really funny is that, on YouTube, we are all about sharing information. So we always talk about, when the latest price increases are going into effect. And I would say like a vast majority of the chitter chatter on that topic is focused on Chanel. Now, Chanel has been kind of shady, I think, like in my opinion, in when they talk about their price increases, because they try and give us all these other reasons. They say it's due to supply chain issues. They say it's due to the rising cost of goods. They say it's like due to Corona and inflation and things like that. But truthfully, I kind of never bought that because at the end of the day, if Chanel had to increase their prices by these extortionate amounts, multiple times a year, like 10, 15, 20% every single time, then if it were for those reasons, wouldn't every single other brand, not just in the luxury industry, but in every industry, also need to have increased prices at that scale as well? So that's how you kind of know that, like, listen, as much as I love Chanel and I'm a huge Chanel fan, you know that it's not really for that reason. It's in order to either increase margin and or increase revenue, right? Which is what helps makes these companies money. And I really appreciate that Gucci has been a lot more honest about it. They're like, hey, we are trying to increase revenue and we are trying to increase margin. But I also appreciate that that's not Gucci's only lever. Whereas I feel like in terms of like business strategy, like Chanel hasn't changed that much, right? Like Chanel still has the same in-store experience, pretty much like the same website and app, minus prices and making products harder to find. Whereas Gucci is doing so many other things to help meet this goal. Now, in order for them to get from 9 billion to 15 billion, they have a lot of different strategies that they have mentioned. So first, they're focusing on their timeless collections. So that's why you've seen Gucci, like a lot of other brands, bringing back, the Sylvie bag, the bamboo bag, the Diana bags, all of their like archive bags. They are really focusing on that timeless fashion and really trying to, I think, get the most out of these styles. I would say, like, on my end, I think it's a great strategy, but it's also a little bit frustrating. Like, you all know how much I love classic bags, and classics are classics for a reason. Like, they work. People love them. But I would love to see some new styles of handbags out of Gucci. I mean, like, when you look at like this pyramid here, like, it's very clear that it doesn't show any room for like new, like flagship, hero styles of handbags. Of course, every brand always puts out new styles of handbags every season, but they don't really like double down on like these big bags unless they're super serious about it. And it just seems like Gucci, in my opinion, is really resting on their laurels in terms of their handbag line. Now, it does seem like they're making a lot more changes in terms of their fashion line and really going high end, really trying to deliver like new, exciting pieces to us. So if you are a ready-to-wear shopper from Gucci, I think that you have a lot to look forward to. Gucci is also doing a lot in terms of doubling down on the local store experience, which I think is a great strategy. I mean, how many of us have worked for companies where like the corporate office, the home office sends a directive down to you and you're like, hey, this doesn't work for my customer. This doesn't work for my market. So it looks like Gucci is really trying to like decentralize, the strategic direction that is given to each of the local markets and really put it in the hands of the local owners. So I think that is an incredible strategy. It seems like users are going to be getting a lot more like local, nuanced, curated experiences, whether it's like what types of things are marketed in store or different types of special customer events and pop-up stores. So I think that is a really smart thing for Gucci, but I'm still sad about the price increases. Also, I think it's really interesting because when we talk about price increases, like I said earlier, we often talk about Chanel, sometimes maybe Saint Laurent, maybe Hermes, but for the most part, like our talk about price increases does not focus on Gucci, and Gucci actually has been steadily increasing prices anyway over time. I believe there were about 2 price increases in the past year. Granted, they're much smaller in scope and they are much more reasonable, but it's just interesting because you can see that Gucci is trying to elevate themselves to keep up with some of the other brands that have these really high price points. Finally, like just to wrap up Gucci, another point that I thought was really interesting is that they want to conserve, their opening price point items that they have. So, a lot of times like Gucci does offer like small little like handbags that are under $1,000 or in the $1,000 to $2,000 range, which is a great way to get new customers into the brand. And coupled with the fact that Gucci is really trying to focus on Gen Z and millennials, getting some more of that younger blood into their customer base, getting them to become these like raving loyal fans is really smart. So that way they can convert customers who started with Gucci with like one of their like lesser expensive handbags, one of their more opening price points. And over time, grow them and like upgrade them to, more expensive handbags or get them into additional categories like ready to wear or jewelry. So overall, I think Gucci is being really smart about this, but it just sucks that they're increasing prices. Now, also on Capital Markets Day, we learn that Saint Laurent is also going to be increasing prices. And it makes a lot of sense because if you think about it, for the past few years, like a lot of us on YouTube have even said, like Saint Laurent is one of the best price luxury fashion houses out there where you can get amazing quality goods at, relatively speaking, in the luxury world, like a pretty good price point. But we have noticed over the past few years that Saint Laurent is increasing prices. And this makes sense because the Kering Group has a directive to increase the profitability of Saint Laurent. Now, they do also want to increase overall sales. So Kering wants Saint Laurent to go from its current stage of about a $3 billion business, and they want to get it to a $5 billion business. So that is going to make it almost double in terms of size, which is inherently going to bring in a lot more money for the Kering Group. But they also need to work on increasing the profitability of Saint Laurent. Now, Saint Laurent is plenty profitable. However, they do bring in lower margins than Gucci. So Saint Laurent right now brings in a margin of about 28%, whereas Gucci brings one in around 38%. So there's some work that Saint Laurent needs to do in terms of bringing up their profitability. So right now, I think they're around 28%. I think their goal within the next few years is to get to 30%. And I'm sure over time, through both price increases and, hopefully cost reductions in terms of like their operating model, they're hopefully probably going to get Saint Laurent closer to that 38% margin that Gucci brings in. Now, Saint Laurent's presentation didn't necessarily spell out the price increases as definitively as Gucci did, but you can still see it here. If you take a look at when they're talking about how they plan to grow their customer base, over here at this last bullet, it says grow average spending and share of top clients. So they want to get top clients spending on average more and more with Saint Laurent, and the only way to do that is to increase prices and introduce items that cost more. Also, if you look here under products, again at the last bullet, it says elevate price positioning and maintain uncompromised quality in all product categories, which means if you want to elevate your price positioning, you are going to do that by saying that these items justify a higher price point. So that just means that prices are going up for Saint Laurent too. But on that note, Saint Laurent also has some things going for it that Gucci doesn't. So as we talked about, Gucci is heavily reliant on the Asian Pacific region for a lot of their sales. A high percentage of their sales come from there. Whereas Saint Laurent actually has a lot more even distribution across different markets and different geographies. I mean, they're pretty much evenly spaced across, the Americas, Europe, and APAC. So, Saint Laurent doesn't have to do as much there, but just like Gucci, they are working on expanding. America is always going to be like a big key focal point for this brand. So you can see here, they've got a lot of different stores planned that they want to open in the near future. And also, Saint Laurent is doubling down on growing their business for their locals. It seems like locals are the true money makers, whereas historically it had been tourists. So they're working on creating more, again, curated, nuanced, beautiful, like personalized experiences, kind of like their Rive Droit line, in order to cater to their locals, those that are like the bread and butter of their business. Also, I believe that both brands, both Gucci and Saint Laurent, are working on increasing their penetration with the male population, which is really interesting. We're trying to get like more guys on board. And I think both lines have also seen more of an emphasis on like this like gender fluid point of view, where a lot of us aren't really as focused on like women's clothing and men's clothing. We just want clothing that works, handbags that work, and I don't really care what fashion line it's in. So I think it's really interesting. Granted, just like you all, I am super bummed about these price increases that are going to be happening for Saint Laurent and Gucci. But with this knowledge, I say that means if there are some items that you have been wanting, you probably should go out and get them. Now, I'm not saying that like run out in a frenzy and try and go and snap things up. But if there's stuff that you've been like waiting on buying, if you know you're going to want it, now might be a really good time to buy. So that way you can lock in those lower prices before Saint Laurent and Gucci start breaking our heart and increasing those prices. Now, if you want more information on the strategies of both of these companies, like I said, I will link their presentations for you down below so you can take a look yourself. I really recommend it. Honestly, it is so interesting, especially for those of you that are really into like learning about how business works. Like, I couldn't get enough of it. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informational and helpful. And if you did, I would love it if you could just give this video a like. Just give it a little thumbs up down in the corner below. And if you haven't already, what are you doing? You need to subscribe to my channel. So that way you can get all my latest content about all things shopping delivered straight to you. Thank you again for watching. My name is Lily, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, everyone.